Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Today, we're going to look at what I believe is the most powerful sermon ever preached. And believe it or not, it's not one of mine. It is the Sermon on the Mount. Think of it like Jesus' version of a viral TikTok video. And by the way, our YouTube channel, just so you know, this week we went over 100,000 subscribers who follow our services and our daily devotions. I checked this morning, it was at 100,500, somewhere around there. God is bringing people into our church, people from India, Kenya, Australia, around the world who are watching our services, who are getting to know Him because of that. Jesus' sermon that day on the Mount, it was short, it was punchy, it gets right to the point. But unlike a TikTok video, it won't fade after 30 seconds. It's deep enough to reshape your whole life. It's going to, there's a lot that's going on in this little moment known as the Sermon of the Mount. Have you ever wondered how to really live a life that is flourishing, how to experience a life that feels full and whole and blessed? Then this sermon is your invitation to that kind of life. This morning, I want to invite you to join the crowds as they gather around Jesus on that hillside. Come take a seat with the disciples and then just listen as we listen to Jesus speak to us. What's amazing, and what many people don't realize, including a lot of Christians, is that Jesus wants us to be happy. Do you know that? Not just in a shallow, superficial kind of way, but in a deep, soul level kind of way. Because everybody seems to be chasing after happiness. How can I be happy? How can I live a life where I will thrive? How can I live in such a way that I'm walking with God, that He will be able to pour out His blessings onto me? And that's what Jesus is after for you. Jesus wants you to be happy. Some of you just need to tell your face to be happy. The word joy is mentioned 20 times in the Gospels. When you look at the book of Acts, the word joy is mentioned 18 times. And what you find in Acts is every time that the Spirit shows up, every time that God moves to bring renewal, He always brings joy. Every time the Spirit shows up, you will find in the book of Acts that He brings joy. And you don't have to look very far to see that people are looking for happiness. They're looking for joy. Some of the most streamed podcasts that you will find online are about wellness, your mindset, mental health, the pursuit of joy. In fact, there's a podcast called The Happiness Lab, hosted by Dr. Laura Santos. It has tens of millions of downloads. So I need you to really hit our YouTube page so we can catch up. When Dr. Santos offered a class called The Psychology and the Good Life, almost 1/4 of all of the students who were at Yale University, where she offered this class, almost 1/4 of the freshman students enrolled in that class. If you look at book sales over the past decade, books like Atomic Habits, The Art of Happiness, they continually chop the bestseller charts. People are hungry for meaning, for purpose. They want to live a life that feels whole. If you search for happiness on TikTok, you will get videos that have billions of views on happiness. Hashtags like self-care, healing, manifesting, mental health, they're exploding online. Influencers are building their entire careers on teaching people how to protect their peace and how to find joy. People are desperate, not just to look happy, but how to feel happy. Every year, the United Nations publishes what it calls the World Happiness Report. What's interesting is the US is never at the top. In fact, most times it's the Finns from Finland, which I find interesting because I have some Finnish friends, and they are happy, but it's not the kind of happiness that God would bring. Most of them, I haven't seen people drink like the Finns. But, we have more and more of everything. We can get it quicker than we ever can before, and yet we still seem to have greater anxiety, more isolation, more sadness, and we feel less fulfilled as people. So the real question with this self-help and with all of this content and with all of this research is, why does happiness feel so elusive to us today? Now, it's not a mystery why happiness is such a big deal, because almost everybody is searching to be happy. Many people live lives with a sense of quiet desperation. They feel that they're not living the full life that they really could be living. They feel that there is something more out there, something better. And if they can just watch one more video, read one more book, then they will find happiness. We want joy, not just survival. We want peace instead of pressure. And beneath it all, we're asking, how can I really flourish? How do I find happiness? How do I let go of this anxiety and this sadness that weighs me down? So 5 years after Dr. Santos offered this class, Psychology and the Good Life, she was interviewed by Time Magazine. And when she interviewed Time Magazine, she just gave them this very vulnerable answer. The headline for the article was, "The Happiness Professor Admits that she is burnt out." After years of teaching, thousands, millions of downloads, after all of that, the person who is teaching the most about happiness is struggling herself to find and to feel it. Even the experts on happiness can't escape the pressure, the exhaustion, and the weight that so many of us carry. So maybe the answer today is not a new strategy. Maybe it's not a new podcast or a new download. Maybe what we don't need is another best-selling book. Maybe what we need is Jesus. In the Sermon on the Mount, we find something remarkable. We find that Jesus, our Creator, the Creator Himself, stepping into our broken world and shows us how we can live joyful lives right here and right now. Not just survive, but a life that's whole, meaningful, and blessed. If you want to know what happiness and joy look like, you don't need to be scrolling, doom scrolling on your phone or searching. What you need to do is just listen to Jesus. Dr. Jonathan Pennigan, he's a world-renowned scholar on the book of Matthew. He says that the Sermon on the Mount is Christianity's response to one of the biggest questions that humanity has ever asked. And that question is, what does it mean to be truly happy? And that's exactly what Jesus is doing in the Sermon on the Mount. He's going to answer all of the deep questions about what it means to live a really, truly blessed and meaningful life. The Jesus we meet in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5 is not cold. He's not distant. He's not handing out a list of rules telling you what you have to do that are going to weigh you down. He doesn't want to add to the load of things that you are already carrying with you. He's inviting you into a new way of life that will bring healing, peace, and joy. A way that actually works in the real world. What the Sermon on the Mount does is it challenges our assumptions about what Jesus really wants for us and what he wants for you. Because a lot of people, they have the idea that Jesus is kind of the strict kind of guy, no fun, and it's going to make your life smaller. And you're going to become more serious and less joyful. Like Jesus is shutting down everything that makes you enjoyable, makes your life enjoyable. That he's going to be, a buzzkill to your joy. Maybe you've thought to yourself, if I really give my life to Jesus, I'm just going to end up serious and somber and, just kind of miserable. And if that's how you see Jesus, as someone who makes your life harder instead of easier, I get it. Because when you look at Christians, often that's the idea you might get of Jesus. And I don't blame you that you wouldn't want to follow someone like that. Or some of you who are Christians, you might say, yeah, I'm a Christian, but really, if you're honest with yourself, you haven't been taking it all that seriously. And part of the reason is a quiet assumption, an assumption that you may not even dare to say out loud, but it's there. That if you really start pursuing Jesus with your whole heart, your life won't get better. You'll think that your life is going to get harder with all of the rules that following Jesus has traditionally brought. Trading your joy for obligation, trading your peace for pressure, trading in flourishing for frustration. But what if that is not what Jesus is like at all? A lot of people picture Jesus as the one who walks into the party, and turns off the music, like he's here to shut everything down, rein things in, make things smaller, quieter, and more serious. But when you read the Sermon on the Mount, and thank you, Eriko, for reading it so fabulously this morning. Suddenly, the picture that gets revealed to us about Jesus, the picture that many of us have about Jesus, will be shown to become a fraud. Because wherever God works to bring renewal and joy and happiness and peace in your life, Satan will work to bring resistance and to bring a fraudulent view of what God is really like. Jesus is not trying to take anything from you. He's trying to give it back to you. He's not trying to shrink your world. He's trying to expand it. A Jesus who loves you more than you can imagine and wants you to live a truly, deeply free and full life. And it doesn't matter where you have been. It doesn't matter where you've come from. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you are carrying with you this morning, whether it's regrets or guilt or anxiety or depression or doubts that you're not even sure you're allowed to say out loud. He didn't come to take anything from you. He has come to bring you joy. He has come to put life back into you, the kind of life that we were really made for. That is the heart of the Sermon on the Mount. It's not a list of 8 rules. It is an invitation to us, an invitation to become fully alive. So this morning I want to invite you to come and join us on the side of the mountain. Let's ascend with the disciples, not to escape life, but to learn how to live it, how to flourish. Look with me at verse 1. Now Jesus saw the crowds. Jesus' movement is starting to grow. Word is spreading around. People are starting to come. Not because he has a fancy building or a microphone or great TV screens with slides or, a 5-year mission plan, but because when he spoke, something inside of these people said, "This is what I have been looking for." So he goes up on the mountain, and this little sentence is very important. It's not just any setting. It's on a mountain. And for 2,000 years, we've known this as the Sermon on the Mount. It's not the Sermon on the Plains. It's not the Sermon by the lake. Have you ever wondered why it's called the Sermon on the Mount? Why a mountain? Because in the Bible, mountains matter. There weren't a lot of mountains in Israel. Mountains, though, are where heaven and earth seem to touch, where God speaks and where people listen, where perspective gets clearer and the noise of the world starts to fade and we can start to hear what's real. So Jesus climbs up on a mountain. He's not just picking a scenic kind of area. He's saying something. He's inviting these people to rise up with him, to come higher, to see differently, to live differently. This morning, Jesus is inviting you to join him on the mountain. Mountains are where God meets people. It's where Moses received the law. It's where the prophets heard God's whisper. And now Jesus goes up not to thunder out commands to other people from above, but to sit down next to them and to be part of the group. And Matthew is doing something very clever over here. He's leading us up to a moment. When Jesus was born, the wise men came to visit Jesus. On the way, they met with Herod. They told Herod, "We're come to find the King of the Jews." When Herod hears that, he tells his soldiers to go out and to kill all of the newborn babies. And what does Mary and Joseph do? They leave and they go to Egypt to avoid Herod's slaughter of these kids. So Jesus begins his life with an exodus to Egypt. And Egypt isn't just a location for the people listening to Jesus. It's a symbol. It calls to mind for them an entire story, a book from the Bible called the Exodus. So Jesus goes into Exodus. But he doesn't stay there. He comes out of Egypt, just like the Israelites did a long time ago. And then what does he do? He steps into the water. Not the Red Sea this time, but the waters of baptism. At his baptism, something remarkable happens. The Spirit of God descends on him like a dove. And then we hear this voice, the voice of the Father. And it isn't thundering out judgment. It speaks in delight. And it says, "This is my beloved Son, whom I love. In him I am well pleased." By the way, do you know that God says this about you as well? He brags about you to anyone in the universe who will listen to him as he speaks. He will say, "This is my beloved Son. This is my beloved daughter, whom I love. In them I am well pleased." When our girls trained for tennis in Florida, it was very close to Boca Raton. In Boca Raton, there are a lot of Jewish grandmothers. I don't know if you've ever spent, regular grandmothers are bad enough. But Jewish grandmothers, they're a whole lot more. They believe in their grandchildren. And that belief is unshakable. So if they're playing tennis and the umpire calls a ball out, even if that ball is out by a mile, the Jewish grandmother will say to her grandchild, "We need to get that guy some glasses. Obviously, he doesn't know in from out." I'm not sure he even understands the rules of tennis. They brag about their kids. They always believe the best about their grandkids. To God, you are family. God brags about you. In you, right now, all of you, no matter where you're from, no matter what your background, I want you to know that in you, God is well pleased. So Jesus comes out of Egypt, he passes through the water, and then, like the Israelites, he enters into the wilderness. And if you know the story, you know what happens here. The wilderness is where the enemy, Satan, is waiting for him. And it's where Satan shows up, and he just throws every temptation that he can think of on Jesus. But unlike the Israelites in the wilderness, Jesus doesn't give in. He stands, he resists, he overcomes. Right here at the very beginning, Jesus is showing us a new path, a new direction, a different kind of exodus that we can take. One where God leads, where the Spirit empowers, and even in the wilderness, you are not alone. And once the Israelites are in the wilderness, Moses goes up on a mountain. And remember what happens when Moses goes there. He goes up to the top of Mount Sinai. And several important things happen at the top of Mount Sinai. First, he gets God's law in Exodus 20. And then in Exodus 33, he asks God to show him his glory. And now, Jesus goes up onto a mountain. Matthew is trying to show that Jesus is not just the new Moses, but that Jesus is greater than Moses. He is better than Moses. He is the Savior of the world. Just as Moses led the Israelites out of physical slavery in Egypt, Jesus has come to lead you and me out of the slavery that comes from sin. He brings you freedom from the heaviness of guilt, the weight that we were never meant to carry. Those are our Egypt today. And Jesus doesn't come with tablets of stone like Moses did. Jesus comes and he says in John, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you." He comes to lead us on an exodus of the soul. And where the Israelites stumbled, he will stand. Where they failed, Jesus will be faithful. And here in Matthew 5, verse 1, he is the one that is greater than Moses, who ascends to a second mountain to give out the new law of God. So this morning, I want to ask you, who are you listening to on your mountainside? Is it an influencer? Is it an entrepreneur? Is it the author of a new self-help book? Is it whatever's happening in the culture? Is it something flash on social media? Are you listening to your friends? Maybe you're listening to your fears. Every voice that speaks to you promises you something, but not every voice that speaks to you brings life. I had lunch with someone recently. He said to me that he hears the voices in his head, the critical voices from his past, and they're living rent-free in his head. They always come back to him, the voice of his father, the voice of a teacher, someone who was critical of him, reminding him of his failures. And he says, I can't find any way to evict them from my mind. So here's the question. What if the one voice worth listening to is the voice of the man sitting on the mountain? What fascinates me is that we have more access to wisdom, to content, to advice than any other generation ever before us. You can stream a podcast while you're brushing your teeth. You can listen to a dozen books while you're driving in your car. You don't even have to, the inconvenience of turning a page. You can listen to thought leaders. There's life coaches. There's therapists. There's gurus that you can access with just your thumb. And yet, we're the most anxious, most depressed, most medicated generation the world has ever seen. More input, but less peace. That tells me something. It tells me that we might be listening to the wrong voice. It tells me that we need to be listening to someone different. We need to be listening to the man on the mountain. And what happens next? It says his disciples came to him. So they were we're going to climb like the side of the mountain like the disciples did. And we're going to sit at the feet of the great rabbi, the teacher, who spoke the world into being. And we're going to listen as he teaches us how to live a life the way it's always been meant to live, in the world that he created and in the hearts that he longs to restore. The beatitudes, the opening of this great Sermon on the Mount that Erica read to us, it's really quite surprising when you stop and you think about them, because Jesus begins by doing something that most of us wouldn't expect. He comes and says, I want to teach you how to be blessed. I want to tell you how you can be happy. That's what this is. The Beatitudes are Jesus saying, let me show you what a blessed life really looks like. Let me show you what joy looks like, not just for a moment, but for a lifetime. Let's start with the very first word in the Beatitudes. It's blessed. And right now I know you're starting to get hungry and you're thinking there's 8 Beatitudes. We haven't even got to the first one. I just want to let you know we're going to stop after the first one. We'll come back to the others at another time. But each of these short, powerful statements begins the same way. Blessed are, or blessed are those who. It's repeated over and over, almost like a drum beat. But here's the thing. The word blessed that we have here in Matthew, it's one of the most misunderstood words in the whole Bible. For most of us, the word blessed means, I got a job. A parking space opened right up in front of King Soopers for me. I am blessed. The tests from the doctors came back clear. We think of blessings as circumstances going our way. But when Jesus uses the word blessed, he's not just talking about convenience and comfort. That original word in Greek doesn't mean lucky or successful or hashtag blessed. It means something a lot deeper. It means a whole lot more. It means a life full of joy, aligned with God, even when circumstances aren't perfect. That's why we can have joy in sorrow and suffering as Christians. It's a kind of blessing that can't get taken away when you don't get the job, when you can't find a parking space, no matter how many times you ride around the block. By the way, thinking of parking spaces, I heard that Trader Joe's is going to open up 40 new stores in America this year, and they've promised to open up 50 new parking spaces. At least some of you have shopped at Trader Joe's. It's the kind of joy that can't get taken away from you when the tests come back and you're incurable. Because it doesn't come from the outside. It comes from living in the flow of God's kingdom. So when Jesus begins the Sermon on the Mount with the word blessed, he's not offering a reward. He's making a declaration to those who are listening. He is saying, this is where the good life is found, right here. So listen close to what I have to say to you. So Jesus steps up on the mountain, he sits down, he opens his mouth, and he essentially says, happy is the one who lives their lives this way. And it's remarkable. He doesn't launch into a list of rules. He creates a vision for us a picture of a life that is deeply grounded, deeply whole, deeply blessed. And in the first century, the Jewish word, the word blessed there, it would have carried even more weight than it does today. Because now we say bless you when you sneeze. We kind of have trivialized the word. But to be blessed was to be someone who had been touched by the grace of God, someone who had experienced salvation and was living in such a way that their lives were aligned with heaven, that the angels might be leaning over the edge and they would be clapping their hands and saying, yes, that's it. That's the life that God delights in for you. That's what it means to be blessed. It's not about success the way that the world will define it. It's about receiving the applause of heaven. And we need to understand what a beatitude is. One way to think about it is beatitude is attitude. It even rhymes for you. Put those together, and this is what you get. The beatitudes are the beautiful attitudes of the heart that God desires from us, his people. And it's not just nice sayings that he says. It's not a motivational quote that you can put up on your fridge. Jesus over here is not Tony Robbins. They're the kind of inner life that makes someone who is living in the kingdom of God. So when you put it all together, here's what Jesus is doing. He comes to us not with a demand, but with an invitation, and he says, this is where the happiness of the soul begins. Not in what you've achieved, not in what you've earned, not by how others define you, but in who you are becoming. So let's start with the first beatitude. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now the world has their own version of this. Like I said earlier, when God works to bring renewal, Satan will work to bring resistance and to bring in a fake. And here's the fake picture. Blessed are the impressive. Blessed are the independent. Blessed are those who have it all together, for they will always get what they want. If you look polished, if you sound smart, if you manage your image in just the right way, then you will be happy, the world tells you. Even right here, right now, we want to be impressive. I feel that way too. I stand up and I talk about humility, and some part of me still wants you to think, wow, Solly was so impressive today. Because that's the reality of the world that we live in. We walk into rooms, church services, small groups, friendship groups and that. We don't necessarily say it out loud, but we're hoping that someone is thinking, wow, you have it together. You don't have any major needs. I wish I could live your life. And we think that if people are impressed by us, then finally we will be happy. It's kind of what happens 45 minutes before someone comes over to your house. All of you know this drill. You get that great cleanup panic. You start to light candles so that your house will smell good. You throw all of your junk into the closet and tell people, do not open that door, kids, or it's all going to fall out. You're vacuuming with an intensity that you haven't shown since you were studying for finals week. And the goal, when people walk into your house, they will say, wow, this place is amazing. But you're not really doing it for those people. You're doing it for your own self because you want them to think that you have your life together and we want to feel like we really matter. And the truth is, what we do to our homes, we also do to our hearts. We shove the mess into the closet and we tell other people, don't open that door or things are going to fall out. We light religious candles. We tell everybody, I'm fine. But Jesus doesn't start the Sermon on the Mount by applauding the polished. He starts with, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And that little verse is a doorway into everything else that will follow in this chapter. Jesus says if you want to enter into the life of the kingdom, if you want to enter into God's activity in the world, then the freedom that you were made for, it starts right here with this verse. It starts with poverty of spirit. So what does that mean? Poverty of spirit is the daily recognition that I am not enough on my own. I'm reading this book about the CEO of NVIDIA. NVIDIA is the largest company in the world, the first company to reach a value of $4 trillion. The CEO says in the book that he wakes up every morning, he looks at himself in the mirror, and he says, "You are so stupid. You are a terrible guy." And he proceeds to berate himself, he says in the book. I found that fascinating because he only goes halfway. Poverty of spirit is not berating yourself and then going off to run your company. Poverty of spirit is to realize every day that you are not enough on your own. But here's the difference. You don't have to go it alone by yourself. And that's why scholars say that this first beatitude, it isn't just first on the list, it's first in importance, because you cannot enter into the kingdom without it. Because if you don't think you need Jesus, you won't listen to what Jesus has to say to you. That is where Christianity begins, not in achievement, but with need. It begins with your poverty. That's what separates Christianity from religion. Religion says, do enough, be enough, prove yourself. Jesus says, come empty-handed, come needy, come to me, poor in spirit. Tim Keller puts it perfectly. He says, most of us don't want to be poor in spirit. We want to be middle class in spirit. He wouldn't say we want to be rich in spirit because we don't want to feel arrogant. But middle class feels kind of respectable, feels independent, feels capable. So he says things like this. I'm here because it's good for me, but I don't really need God for my finances or my marriage or my dating life or my future. That is middle class spirit. And the danger, you can have a middle class spirit, but if you don't realize that you need Jesus in your life, you will completely miss out on the kingdom. Jesus says, can we just be honest with each other right here on the mountain and say, I come here just as I am. I come here with the things that I'm struggling with. I'm coming here because I don't have it all together. That's why we have church for us. Next time we'll take a look at the rest of the Beatitudes. But as you leave church this week, I want to ask you, who are you listening to? I want to encourage you to listen to the one who will lead you on a new exodus for your soul. The one who says you are blessed exactly because you are poor in spirit. For yours is the kingdom of heaven. Not just one day, but you can enter into that kingdom today. Tyler and Oni.
Thank you.